Welcome to the Pat White Show. So let me ask you a question. What do you think about all the coverage from ABC, NBC, CBS involving RussiaGate and all the things that's happening from the Justice Department and all the things that are going on with Pam Bondi and things happening all over the Washington, D.C.? What do you think about all that coverage? What? You haven't seen any coverage? The only coverage you've seen is Epstein? You mean that's the only thing ABC, NBC, and CBS and MSNBC and CNN, that's the only thing they're covering is Epstein and how Trump's involved? You haven't seen anything else on that? Really? Well, maybe there's a reason. Maybe there's a particular reason why the local Alphabet network don't want to cover any of this thing going on involving RussiaGate because, well, maybe, just maybe, they're complicit. So what do you say we talk about that for a second, see what's going on? Maybe you didn't know what's happening. So let me fill you in. Well, as you know, the situation involving RussiaGate is starting to, crumble. And by crumble, I mean that things are happening. Turns out that some FBI burn bags, that stuff was supposed to be burned, were hidden in a room in the FBI. It was found out, and people started going through the communiques, the paperwork, and starting reading this stuff and going, wait a minute, this is stuff we didn't know about. This is stuff that nobody else knew about, but let's keep reading this stuff out of these burn bags. They're starting to learn things. Learn things from the annex, the Durham annex, all the stuff that was going on, and suddenly Pam Bondi says, wait a minute, there's some bad stuff going on out here, and they're starting to release it. Releasing things that were, hidden away, that nobody found. So what happens? Well, suddenly the wheels start rolling a little bit. And the big thing is that Pam Bondi appoints a strike force. Now, a strike force is a whole team of lawyers, a whole team of investigators that are used predominantly for organized crime, the mafia, any big time crimes where they need to have a whole lot of people, very good people going to investigate. That's what she did. So they've got a strike force going and starting to release things, copies of emails and copies of evidence of people doing things and saying things. And suddenly we're starting to find out little parts, little part here, little part there. Parts are starting to add up. So Pam Bondi appointed a special prosecutor. Hey, we need to investigate this, take this to a grand jury. And you're saying, well, wait a minute. Can't take it to a grand jury. This is any crime committed by anybody. That was clear back in 2016, 17. Well, you're basically right, except for one thing. There's a thing called conspiracy, the conduct of conspiracy. Now, where is it listed? How about 18 U.S.C. 371? That's the code, 18 U.S.C. 371, and take a look at what it reads. You can read it for yourself. About people getting together to do bad stuff. Well, conspiracy in this case is if people within the government are conspiring to prevent someone else from becoming part of the government, i.e. president, and continuing to do it as time goes on, there's no 5-year statute of limitations on this, none. Doesn't happen. Still keeps going. So that prosecutor that she appointed, would he want to go to a federal grand jury in Washington, D.C.? Probably not. 95% of the people in Washington, D.C. are all Democrats, and getting anything done against a Democrat in D.C. is almost impossible. Now, you could say, well, they could go over to Virginia, but Virginia, that's just another Washington suburb, call it what you will. It appears that the prosecutor is going to a grand jury in Florida. Now you're going, what? How do they do that? Mar-a-Lago. 2022, the FBI raided Donald Trump's home in Mar-a-Lago. Why? Said they were looking for classified documents that he wasn't turning back in, they wanted back. Well, turns out that raid garnered about 100 classified documents, and not exactly highly classified, but apparently they were looking for something else. Something else they thought Trump may have to use to go against them if the time was ever right. Or whatever it was, they didn't find it. because apparently it was somewhere else. So now things are starting to be found out. But this prosecutor goes down to Florida and can present all the evidence. Here's who did what. Here's what's going on. And it turns out there's a whistleblower. And I'm going to take you back to in 2016 when Donald Trump had just been elected president. Now, this goes back in December. He had been elected, but he wasn't inaugurated yet. Been elected. And because he is now the president, he is entitled to the same presidential daily brief that Barack Obama was getting. Barack's going out, Trump's coming in. He gets the same presidential brief. They both do. So it turns out on the 8th of December, he calls all the people of the NSC and a whole bunch of other people into the conference room of the White House and says, hey, you got this brief coming out tomorrow. And the brief says from all the security agencies, there's 17 of them saying the Russians did not hack, couldn't hack what was going on in the election. Because that was the narrative. The Russians were hacking it. They wanted Trump to win, and they were hacking it. He was an illegally elected president. That was the narrative. Except the security, all the intel people said, That was going to be in the presidential daily brief for the December 9th. Obama says, no. You better go back and check that again. Because something's going on because, well, gee whiz, that's not going to work. The problem was that same information had, in fact, been given to the House of Representatives saying, we don't see anything, there's nothing going on. And then there was also that situation where the Norwegians, the Dutch, if you will, intercepted some Russian stuff and found out the Russians had tapped into the DNC computer and found out a whole bunch of nasty stuff, mostly about Hillary. They said at the U.S., here's the stuff we got. Here's what's going on. And the Russians decided they weren't going to get involved with the election because they figured Hillary was going to win. Everybody figured Hillary was going to win. Russians backed off, said, nothing we can do. We got dirt on her, so when she gets elected, we got dirt to use on her. Well, so all these people were gathered into the presidential briefing, and there was a whole bunch of folks, including James Comey, the Three Stooges, as we call them. That's Clapper, Comey, and they were all called in, and a whole bunch of other folks saying, we got to change that assessment. So after the meeting was over, notes were done. Those notes have been now retrieved as evidence. They now have the notes. But need to change this. Review this and change it. And apparently somebody in that area said, wait a minute, we can't do that. That's not legit. That's not honest. That's not honest. You can't do that. We know what we know. The Russians didn't do that. So apparently the word is that you either do it or your job's in danger. You will not have a job. You'll be thrown out. We'll bury you so far that you won't be able to pick up sand. Well, apparently, this whistleblower went to the IG at the NSA. Didn't get anything there. Went to the IG at the DOJ. Didn't get there. And he also went to the senator who represents him and said, hey, I got something going on here you need to know about. The senator wouldn't even give him the email address so that he can write stuff and say, here's what's going on. Well, that person exists. That person is a potential whistleblower. Said, here's what happened. All right, so all these things are going on, folks. All these things are happening. And you're saying, okay, now there's going to be warrants. They're going to be coming up next week. No, they're not. Yeah. See, the problem is they have to go through and cull through all the paperwork, start questioning everybody at the lowest level, person who wrote this document, person who did this, person who did that, and call them in. What did you know? Why did you write this? What did you do? You get that information, lowest level. And you get that information, then you find out the next person who was involved with that document, because documents go through a lot of levels. Okay, who was the next person above you who did this? Well, we contact that person. We talk to that person. From what we learned from the lowest person, we start asking the person above that. Then we keep going up the ladder of people who are assembling the documents. Till finally we have enough evidence to say, now we're going after the people that said this. Now we've got something to investigate on. You turn that over to the grand jury. There's the information there. And if the grand jury ends up being in Florida, it could be a very interesting case. Now, on conspiracy, Like I said, since the 18 USC 371 is conspiracy, we're talking not the 5 years. This keeps going because it's been continuing to keep going on. We know that. So what's going to happen? Well, you're saying, well, they can't bring charges against Obama. Well, conspiracy is a different animal. And he could say, hey, I'm president. Supreme Court says I can do things under my job. I'm going to take that tact. I'm going to say I can do this stuff because I'm president. I had the security changed, and I did that. Fight me on it. Okay, you can do that. Say you're president, you got immunity. Or else you could say, hey, I asked my security people, I said, I've been seeing all this stuff on TV and radio and all the media saying, hey, the Russians were doing this, but you're telling me that it wasn't? Well, it's two different stories here. I need you to go back and make dead sure that what the media is saying. Really? So they go back and say, okay, here, we write a new one. And that one, because the December 8th PDB was not released to Trump. It was rewritten. So where do we stand? I'll tell you where we stand. We stand that right now it's going to take a while to get all this done. If you expect indictments to be done in a month, it's not going to. It could be 6 months. It could be next year. They got a lot of evidence to garner, a lot of people to talk to, but build a case. And yes, the grand jury then can be brought in and see what happens. But right now, so you know, that maybe, just maybe, if Obama decides to turn on the three stooges, Brendan, Coleman, and Clapper, then they could squeal and say, wait a minute, it wasn't us. Somebody's going to squeal. Somebody's going to say something. Somebody's going to be caught. And somebody's going to say, I'm going to tell you what's going on because I don't want to go to jail. That's the way it works. We shall see what happens, but don't expect anything quickly. It doesn't work that way. They've got to invest everything and have all their chips and all their ducks in a row. And once they present it, then we'll see what happens. But now you know what's going on, and the media's not talking about it because they themselves were complicit in all this, reporting this to you. And now they don't want to talk about it because if they do, they are tattling on themselves. And that they can't do, that they're afraid to do, and that could cost them, since they work under the public doctrine, they could be forced to lose their licenses to be able to operate. That could happen because the government controls the media and controls the airways. Something to think about, but it's something you didn't know, but guess what? Now you do. The dirty secret is starting to come along and come out, and eventually somebody is going to pay, and pay very, very big. The chances are pretty good. You heard about Stephen Colbert being axed from CBS. Well, not really axed. They just didn't renew his contract going over to the new ownership, which is Sky Media. And they took a look at what's going on, the money. He's got $100 million budget. And CBS thought they'd make $120 million, but turns out they're only making 70, so they're effectively losing money with Stephen Colbert. So they said, look, we're not renewing late night, and Stephen Colbert, we're not renewing your contract. All right, that's been a fight been going on. But a new one has arisen, and this one goes into radio, namely radio broadcasting. And now, Sirius, as you may or may not know, is a, subscription system. You've got a Sirius-capable radio that you can receive satellite signals. You could pay money, if you want to be able to listen to Howard Stern as well as all the other channels on the Sirius situation. And they've got a lot of channels. I mean, hundreds of channels. Everything you want to listen to, whether it's college or you want to hear Fox News being broadcast on the radio instead of watching it on TV, you can do it. They have a lot of good channels on their particular frequency. But one channel in particular you're paying for, actually you're paying a little more for, is the ability to listen to Howard Stern. Now, Howard Stern used to be in New York, or was a New York individual, heard pretty much around the country, and he's very outrageous in what he has to say. Turns out in the last election, he was very much against Donald Trump, very much for the Democrat, Kamala Harris, and he had her on for an interview. Well, obviously, that ruffled a lot of feathers, as you can well imagine. But Howard Stern, who's the guy making $100 million in a 5-year contract, told his listeners, I hate you if you voted for Trump. That's what he said. I hate you if you voted for Trump. And if you did, stop listening to my program. Well, I know a lot of people, regardless of political affiliation, like listening to Howard Stern. Sometimes he's insightful. Sometimes he's interesting. I've listened to Howard Stern. But when he goes and he tells people directly to their face, I hate you because you voted for Trump, do not listen to my show. You know what happened? His ratings on Sirius tanked. Now, you're paying to listen to Howard Stern. On Sirius, people decided they ain't going to do that. I'm not going to be spending my money on you, sir. So now his contract, $100 million, ends up this fall. Now, is Sirius going to offer Howard Stern a different contract? Probably yes. He lost too much of his audience. Can't sell the product. And if you do sell it, you can't sell his show and his advertisers on his show for as much as you got before because the numbers aren't there. Folks, it's a rating game in radio. It's a rating game in television. It's numbers. It's eyeballs. Clients, advertisers, if you will, they want to have many people as possible to see their ad. If you don't have a lot of people, they're not willing to pay for that because they're paying for cost per thousands, CPM, if you will. Well, that's what's happening. Stern lost a majority of his audience, and I got to tell you, folks, you honk off half your audience, and you lose half your audience. Well, guess what? Your product ain't worth as much as it used to. That's why you got to be careful. You try to stay on the straight and narrow, work with both sides. Jay Leno was right. He said if you honk off half of your audience, you're going to lose them. And Jay Leno said, you lose them, that's going to kill you. And it does. That's why he said you work both sides. The great hosts like Johnny Carson, he bashed both sides. A good comedian, a good whatever it happens to be, will go after both sides of an argument, both individuals, both left and right. That's what you do. You don't start going, I'm only on one side, and if you're on the other side, I hate you. I don't want you to listen to me. Howard Stern did that. Will someone else pick him up? Well, it certainly could happen. We don't know. But I'll tell you right now, Howard Stern is coming off of Sirius XM this fall because he is not going to have his contract renewed because he honked off half of his audience. And right now, they don't want to pay $100 million for something that has half the people listening that used to be there. It's a numbers game, folks. I don't care who you are. Stephen Colbert, Howard Stern, anybody. If you don't have the numbers, you don't have the audience. You don't have the audience, you ain't worth much to your advertisers. It's the name of the game, and you F-A-F-O. Now you know what happens when you do. Just saying. I don't enjoy wearing a conspiratorial hat, or as they call it, the old tin hat. But there's something going on, folks. It's something we need to chat about. And it's not just one thing, it's actually two things. One thing's above our head, and the other thing's beneath our feet. And both are, frankly, pretty important. The thing above our head is a dark, elongated object in space. Now you're going, what? Space object? Well, it's coming toward Earth. And scientists can't figure out what it is. And it's moving pretty doggone quickly, about 80,000 miles an hour. And they don't really know what it is. It's like a big, giant thing. It's not like an asteroid that has parts going behind it. There's a lot of things they can't figure out. It's got a symmetrical shape. It's elongated, sharp edges, and really unusual form, believe it or not. And they say it's sort of a design rather than a natural formation. Has no thermal signature. Infrared observations can't detect anything significant. It's very silent in its movement. There's no trail, there's no dust, there's no nothing behind it. And it's not spinning. So they're figuring, what is this thing coming toward us? Now, they say it could be here in November. Could it be a spacecraft? Could it be anything? Heaven only knows. We've seen these things before, and more often than not, they end up being, nothing. There's a Harvard astrophysicist by the name of Avi Loeb, I believe it is, thinks it's an alien probe and is coming toward Earth to see what's going on. And remember, we've sent out probes to other places, other planets, other universe. seeing what's going on out in the universe. Well, maybe somebody's coming back. Nobody really knows what's going on. But it is something weird. It is something different. And they have a name for it. It's just a fancy name. It's called 31 Atlas. I don't know what that means, but it's barreling toward our solar system. And like I said, at 81,000 miles an hour. Is it a cosmic rock? Maybe, probably. Could it be an alien spacecraft? Like I said, that's the tinfoil hat stuff. I don't know. But scientists all around the world are going, what the heck is this thing coming toward us? Will it hit us? Don't know. Now, it's the third interstellar object ever spotted. Number 3. But it's scientists apparently are on edge about this thing, and they don't really know what it is, what it's going to do, or which direction it's going to go. It's not natural. Now, they're not calling this an imminent attack. Just understand that. But you got some imaginations going on here, folks. Sort of reminds me of that Star Trek version. I think it was version 4, Way Home. It's the one about the whales, and the little thing comes to the planet in San Francisco and hears a voice and makes rain happen and bad stuff. Had to go find a couple of whales, go back in time, get a couple of whales, bring them into the future, and the thing went away. Okay, fine. Well, that's what's going on above our heads. But what's going on beneath our feet, that's even more concerning. Because, folks, that's the earth we live on. And the earth is shifting. And it's no longer a small thing. I mean, there's big things happening. There's measurable global indicators that something on Earth that we haven't seen in, say, 1,000 years, maybe longer than that. The magnetic field, it has dropped down 9%, and it's rapidly shifting, heading towards Siberia. That means the molten core inside the Earth is moving. Something's going on, folks. Earthquakes, volcanoes, the entire ring of fire. Now, you can see, this is a big ring that goes from one part of the Earth to the other, completely circles the Pacific Ocean area. Things are happening. We're getting volcanoes popping up. Stuff in Hawaii's popping up. They had a huge earthquake off the coast of Russia. I mean, one of the biggest in history. Something's happening. But also faults are now happening on the East Coast. Actually, there have been earthquakes going on. Various types of faults that are starting to happen. So it's something going on beneath us. And here's something else that's going on a little weird. You take places like Yellowstone. Yellowstone is really a big, giant volcano. Animals are leaving. They're getting up and heading out. Where are they going? And why are they leaving? Do they know something we don't know? I'm just telling you all that because, well, is the Earth realigning itself? Is the Earth coming together? This is, I don't like the way parts are put together. We're not a whole thing, folks. We're parts. We're faults. We're sections. We are not a homogeneous planet, if you think about it. There's all sorts of parts going on. And you take a look at it and say, yeah, it's something going on underneath the ground. It's getting ready to go bang. Something hasn't happened. Even in California, they're talking about, well, maybe the big one could be coming. Maybe. Remember what happened in San Francisco way, way back a couple hundred years ago? The big earthquake in San Francisco that went on? That was a big one. Did a lot of mess. I remember the 64 earthquake in Alaska. Trust me, I lived there. Things are going on. But this is bigger than that. This is bigger than anything we've ever seen. And right now, one of the places we're worried about is Mount Rainier. That's over there in Seattle and Tacoma, Washington. That thing's got a massive number of earthquakes going on. Something is going underneath that mountain. If Mount Rainier were to blow, you are talking a real serious problem. Not just with the mountain blowing up, the melted ice. All that's going to come down in a rush. You can't believe what that's going to do. And there's millions of people who live in those areas. And if the Yellowstone were to blow, that's a huge volcano unto itself. You realize that it could kill off millions of people in the western part of the United States, and it could dull the sun and create a real big atmospheric problem that could cloud the sun. For how long, nobody knows. All of these things are going on, folks. So, yes, we've got things above us. There's something coming toward us. Scientists don't know what it is. They got a name for it. but they're not really sure what it is. Is it alien? Is it natural? It's not acting natural. That's a concern. And now below our feet, the earth is moving. Carole King, I think, said it right. The earth's moving under my feet. Well, right now it is. Things are going on, folks. Don't know what it is. Can't say what it is. But is Mother Nature starting to get riled up? Mother Nature going to do something really bad? And when is it going to happen? And where is it going to happen? All these are questions that no one really knows the answer. But I can tell you this. I'd be concerned if I were you. It's not wearing a tinfoil hat. The numbers are there. The situation is there. Things are happening. And things are getting scientists really concerned. Not just what's under our ground, but what may be coming toward us from who knows where. That's what's going on, folks. And now I can take off my tinfoil hat and say, I told you, something's coming. Well, if you're one of those people that has started to watch the WNBA simply because of the Caitlin Clarks and the fact, well, there's what else to watch in the summertime? Let's be honest. Football's just starting up, but it's preseason. The college games don't begin until the end of August. So right now, women's basketball, it's worth watching because it be kind of entertaining. But the entertaining has created a problem. Apparently, somebody or someone has been throwing, well, sex toys on the court. And it started out in Atlanta, where a gentleman, a 23-year-old man by the name of Delbert Carver, was arrested and jailed for throwing a sex toy onto the court. But then it didn't stop. It's been going on, and it happened again on Thursday night. Not just one, but two were thrown. It all happened in the latter part of the game at the Wintrust Arena in Chicago. About 6 seconds left in the game, and somebody tosses one of these out onto the court again. And problem is, it was not just one, but it was two. And police tried to figure out who was doing it, who was the person who was throwing this out there. They arrested a couple of gentlemen, took them into custody, if you will. But no one was able to corroborate the fact they were the ones who threw these sex toys onto the floor of the game. So the police had to let them go. Well, as you know, it happened over in Los Angeles when the Indy Fever were playing the Los Angeles Sparks. Now, why was all this happening? You're asking yourself, what are these people trying to be funny, trying to objectify women playing playing basketball? Well, as it turns out, the answer is no. Because there was a pattern going on here someplace. There was something going on. I said, why is this happening? Not just in Atlanta, in Los Angeles, in Chicago. Same routine, same thing happening. Now, you're saying, well, gee whiz, someone needs to be charged with this. And yes, they're talking about charging an individual with this. And what they're looking at charging him with is disorderly conduct, public indecency, indecent exposure, and criminal trespass. Now, do you think any prosecutor in any of these markets is going to go forward with that? Because what if somebody decides to come in, another lawyer, and a lawyer who's not a street lawyer, who's not an appointed lawyer, somebody right out of law school? What if a high-powered lawyer, a lawyer with a little bit of credibility, shows up and says, you can't charge that. You want to go through this? You want to take my client to a trial? Every prosecutor out there is going to go, no, this ain't worth it. This is dumb. This is stupid. It ain't worth it. Now, the commissioner of the WNBA, Ms. Kathy Engelbert, she says, oh, they're going to be charged with felonies. No, they're not. It ain't going to happen. This is a stupid misdemeanor that probably will not get charged. If somebody does, it'll be for some plea bargain deal that's opened up saying they're being obnoxious or whatever statute they want to drag up. May cost someone a fine or may cost them a slap on the wrist, probation, or whatever. But what is this really all about? Turns out there's something to all of this. Yes, usually it works out that way because apparently a group of cryptocurrency meme coin creators. You heard me right. A group of cryptocurrency meme coin creators are responsible for this is what's going on. Why? Publicity, folks. That's what they're in it for. Publicity. Because they're throwing the green items to launch a new meme coin they've created, which they're using the name of the coin, which is a play on the sex toy. And they're coming out and saying it. Yeah, we're doing this. You see things happen in games. Hey, you got a lot of eyeballs? You want to get some attention, do something outrageous, and you'll get some attention for whatever the cause is that you're promoting. I mean, how many times have you seen groups who are angry about something, stage a demonstration someplace? Or I remember many years ago, I think it was an Academy Award, David Niven was hosting it, if my memory serves me right. It may not have been the Academy Awards, it was some big award ceremony. A streaker, naked person who runs across the stage. What was that doing? Being an idiot, frankly. And how many people you see run out on the baseball fields or football fields and do something stupid running around? Most of those people, for the most part, are drunk. They get tackled, they get arrested for trespassing or whatever. But this is a little bit different. These people have a goal, have a plan. They want publicity for their meme coin they're creating. They want someone to say, look at us, see what we're doing. Check us out, buy our product. This is how they're getting their point across. And why are they using women's basketball? Because right now, it's the only game in town. There's nothing going on publicity-wise that they know they can get the publicity on. If it were the NFL season, and throwing that on the field in an NFL game, who cares? Nobody in the NFL is going to go big whoop, women's game. You might get some attention, TV cameras are there, focus right on it. So now you know what's going on, folks. This has been a real bad publicity stunt to try to get somebody attention for their product. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do because it's not. But there are idiots in every single profession you could think of. And now when you're trying to get attention for your product, this is what they're doing. And they know that whoever does it and gets caught probably is not going to get charged. It's going to be dismissed or something with a small fine and a slap on the wrist. It ain't going to be a felony because it isn't. And every prosecutor knows it. I'm just telling you what's going on. So now you understand. This is a game. The game is publicity, and the game is to get your name, your product, or whatever it is out there in any way, shape, or form you can. And they have decided the WNBA right now is the only game in town, and they're going to use it. Now you know what's going on. It ain't pretty, it ain't right, but it's the game that some people play. Many years ago, most Americans smoked cigarettes. I know that sounds pretty harsh, but that's the way it was back, well, many years ago. We're talking 25, 30 years ago. As a matter of fact, even if you rode on an airplane, people were smoking cigarettes on an airplane. Well, eventually they said smoking isn't good for you, and airplanes said, okay, we'll have the smoking section and the non-smoking section, which they did. Well, ultimately, cigarettes were banned. As you know, cigarettes have pretty much been banned everywhere. So people that still smoke have found a different way of getting their nicotine, if you will. And it's called vaping. And vaping, where people have these little, it looks like a little cartridge they're holding, a little, almost like a pack of cigarettes, even smaller. It's got a cartridge in it. That cartridge is filled full of nicotine and probably some other stuff that I don't know about. And they inhale that and get their nicotine fix. That's what they do. And I know many people who have these vaping cartridges, and that's what they do. Unfortunately, many young people, teenagers, are taking up this habit, and they're buying the vaping because in all these different flavors. You know, it used to be cigarettes. They had some mint-flavored cigarettes. I remember back in the old days. But anyway, they're having new flavors, and the vaping, they like doing this with these different flavors. Well, if you go on an airliner nowadays, smoking is prohibited. You just can't do it. Not allowed. Well, unless you're a gentleman like Peter Nguyen. Peter Nguyen was flying from Phoenix to San Francisco. It's not a long flight, folks. Phoenix to San Francisco, it might take maybe an hour or so. It's not a long flight, but Peter Nguyen goes into a bathroom on this particular jet that he was flying on, sits down on the commode, and starts smoking his, or vaping as they call it, vaping his machine, cartridge, call it whatever you call it. Well, if you think nobody's going to smell that, trust me. The flight attendants, they will smell it. Pilots will smell it. People like me, anybody who doesn't smoke, you think you're getting away with something, you're not. We do detect it. So the flight attendant, she can smell something's going on. She knows there's someone in the bathroom, and she decides, hey, you're vaping in there, dude. You can't do this. You're on an airline flight. Well, here's what she did. She opened the door while he was vaping. Well, he became very, very indignant, and even said that his rights had been violated, his dignity had been violated, because the flight attendant broke into the restroom while he was in there vaping. He even claimed to be a lawyer and said, I'm going to bring charges against you, a suit against you, or whatever. So it was pretty acrimonious in flights. Flight attendants trying to do her job to stop people from smoking or vaping, and he's upset about it because his dignity has been affected. Well, after the flight was done, Mr. Nguyen was on the ground. He was met by people from the media, and the people in the media said, "Hey, what are you doing?" Well, I'm addicted to nicotine because my father had cancer. You're addicted to nicotine because your father had cancer. Okay, all right. I guess that happens. But did you have to do it on an airliner? Well, yeah, but hey, when you got to do it, you got to do it, he says. And then the reporter says, by the way, are you an attorney? No. Well, then why'd you say it? Well, I don't know. I was upset. Well, Mr. Nguyen, my hope is that you have a date with the federal authorities to discuss this in front of a judge. So maybe the judge can set you on the straight and narrow, and maybe this will be a plan for you to stop utilizing that vaping cartridge and get off the nicotine. Because whether you like it or not, vaping will fill your lungs just as much as a cigarette did, and it can do just as much damage. I'm not a doctor, but I've certainly seen the after photos, and they don't look good. So, Mr. Nguyen, probably not going to be flying for a while. And by the way, good plan, get off the vaping. It's not good for you, and it certainly wasn't good for you to do it on an airliner. You ought to have more sense than that. But stupid is as stupid does.